Today we're at Toyota Gazoo Racing Europe in Cologne. Here's a hint of what awaits you, and Thomas is already waiting for me inside, so let's go in. Hi Zoran, welcome to TGRE in Cologne. First time you're here? First time, and I'm already impressed. Yes, this is our rally car, our core business. We build the engine here in Cologne. That's our Endurance World Champion, we build that one too. And right here's our new sweetheart, the Supra GT4 Evo. That's made in the factory here, so we invite you to take a look around behind the scenes. Have fun. Thank you very much. Let's take a closer look. We're in the place where the main part, the engines, are tested. Next to me is Paul.
Here we examine our GT4 six-cylinder engines and get them ready for racing. We examine various types of fuel that are in use worldwide and are approved for racing. And we also try to provide durability for our customers, which we can do very well with our lubricant partner.
Are you allowed to modify the engines on the hardware side?
In the regulations, there are relatively few options to change the engine because that keeps the entire motorsport operation relatively inexpensive for the customer. And of course, we want to acquire as many customers as possible, so we can only make slight changes to the performance parameters. Of course, we examine the fuel types, push the limits of what's possible with the mapping, and try to tickle out horsepower here and there with performance oils.
If I understand correctly, all the engines then used in racing are tested here.
The racing engines are subjected to a test bench run beforehand, a kind of quality control that we carry out. Then they're built into the car and delivered to the customer. The idea is that the engines don't come back to be checked again here. We also have a couple of development engines that we use for our special development tasks.
I'd be curious to know because I happen to drive a Supra with that engine. What oil do you use and why?
By default, a 0W20 oil is recommended by the OEM. A normal customer can cope with that. For racing, of course, we have completely different requirements. We have a continuous load, we have very high temperatures in the engine compartment, but at the same time, we want to try to reduce friction losses in the engine. We decided to use a 5W40, which is the best compromise for us. It has the same advantages in terms of friction at these higher temperatures in motorsport, but at the same time, it has a much better additivation, which means that we have high-quality additivation here, which means the oil also remains as stable as possible not only in one race, but in several races in a row. Of course, this was also checked with our partner in Japan and confirmed by laboratory tests, and as a result, we also received approval for Ravenol.
So what's the procedure before you approve the oil? I mean, you didn't just decide on Ravenol by chance. I heard there is a lengthy process behind it.
Of course, in the appendix of such a project or a racing project, there are a wide variety of parameters that have to be taken into consideration. And of course, we also have other oil manufacturers that we could have considered. But we wanted to have a local one based in Germany, which makes cooperation good. That was the first requirement. Then contact is made with the oil company, in this case Ravenol. Then samples are exchanged. These samples then tested in our lab, tested in our engines, and at the same time tested again in the labs in Japan. We then also give official approval for this oil for this engine, and we look at the details to see what the advantages are for racing.
A pretty rigorous process to really make sure the content is what it says on the can, I gather.
Yes, unfortunately there are black sheep in the industry, and what's written on the tin isn't necessarily what's inside. That's why, especially when working with new partners, you have to go through this input protocol.
Paul, thanks for the insights. We're speeding on now
My pleasure, thanks.
to the GT4 workshop. And here we are in the GT4 workshop with Hendrik. In front of me is a finished race car, behind me an almost finished one. So what happens here?
Here, quality checks are made again after we've had the vehicle on the check down to check whether everything fits with the vehicle. Is the software okay? Is everything mechanically okay before we then deliver the vehicles to our customers? This vehicle, for example, will be picked up tomorrow, go to America, and take part in a racing series there.
Okay, so these are customer vehicles that are driven all over the world?
Exactly.
As owner of a standard road version of precisely this model, I immediately see the differences in the GT4. But what are the differences to the Evo?
The differences to the Evo vehicle are actually more inside the vehicle. We've done a lot to the chassis. We've got completely new dampers. We've installed reinforced control arms. We've got completely new anti-roll bars, which simply improve the stability of the vehicle and the chassis significantly. The feedback is much more direct. We've done a little bit on the engine performance. The vehicle has more power and a new turbocharger. So far, we have very good feedback. Customers are very satisfied.
Super interesting, Hendrik. Thank you very much.
My pleasure.
And we move on to the next division. We've just seen how important lubricants are, but for cars like the GT4 class to succeed, like the Supra GT4 for instance, you need other technologies too, such as a wind tunnel. Antonio explains how it all works.
Hello, Antonio.
Hi.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
This is quite an interesting place. So, what is this place about?
So this is our wind tunnel number one. We have two wind tunnels here at TGRE,
Okay.
and we use for a lot of different activities with cars, of course, mainly for motorsport, but also with motorbike. We can be very flexible, doing a lot of interesting projects in our wind tunnel. So this is our wind tunnel number one. It's quite big. It's 4 meter times 4. Therefore, can be used both for model scale testing, but also for full scale car testing.
How does it work mainly?
So basically the tunnel is a closed loop tunnel.
Okay.
So it's a closed circuit. Where we are now is the test section. On the other side, there is a big fan with a diameter of 6 meters.
Okay.
So, and of course, you use the fan to accelerate the air up to a speed of 70 meters per second, so 250 kilometers per hour.
250.
Yes.
Interesting. And this is also how you develop the parts, for example, the aero parts for the Supra GT4.
Yes.
It was developed here.
The Supra GT4 was developed here as a full-scale car. So the car was installed here on this restraint system,
Yeah.
and the car is installed on the rolling rod.
Yeah.
This rolling rod is a steel belt that runs exactly at the same speed
Okay.
of the wind. So
Okay.
to simulate
So it
the
simulates the driving car as it is
Exactly,
really.
Exactly. So the wheels are rotating, and it's very important to have this belt because you can simulate the ground effect. This is,
Ah, yeah.
I would say, this is the main difference between a wind tunnel for road cars
Yeah.
and a wind tunnel for motorsport, for sport
Yeah,
car like
okay.
the Supra GT4. You need this rolling rod to simulate the ground effect.
And
of
also the
car.
turning wheels, etc., because they also have an effect on the aerodynamics,
Of
right?
course, of course.
Very interesting.
The effect is very important, particularly we also test Formula One cars, for example, with open wheels. This effect is even more important.
Yeah, definitely. So how often do you use this tunnel?
Try to use it every day. So,
really?
Yes.
Okay.
On different projects. We use for our Toyota projects, for example, for our car for the 24-hour Le Mans, or Supra, many interesting projects for Toyota. but you also use it for third-party customer. So we have Formula
Sure.
1 customer, we have MotoGP customer, we have many kind of different customers.
Because not everyone has this facility, right?
No, it's quite unique. There are not many in Europe.
Yeah.
Basically, the Formula 1 team have similar facilities,
Yeah.
but it's quite unique to have such a facility open also to third-party customer. And of course, it's a big advantage for Toyota because we can develop our cars like we did for the GT4 in-house, and we can really follow the complete process.
Thanks a lot. I keep with my statement. You have a very interesting job, and thanks a lot for your time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We are in one of the production areas and Marcel is standing next to me. Marcel, motorsport parts always have to be lightweight, temperature resistant and are always installed in confined spaces. And you make it all work.
Right, exactly. As you said, here we are in the area where we primarily make the lightweight components, in the composite area. We have a total of 4 production areas here at TGRE. We also use all 4 of them for the GT4 project. Composite is one of them. Then we have fabrication, which I think in Germany is better known as machining. Then the CNC department and the additive manufacturing department. And in construction and design, we choose which parts should be produced with which manufacturing method. If we take the example of the dashboard, this component doesn't play a big role in terms of stability. It's only supposed to have 2 displays, and it's supposed to be relatively light. If you look at it from the top, you can see that there's a sort of velvet cover on top to protect it from sunlight. That's also made in the composite department.
In other words, all these areas you mentioned deal exclusively with the production of motorsport parts?
For the most part, yes, but since we've been the official development center of TMC, that is the Toyota Motor Corporation, the parent company in Japan since I think 2017, we also have certain other job contracts and pre-development projects where we partly manufacture parts for them. But I'd say 90% of our parts go into motorsport projects.
Okay, there's a bumper back there from the GT4 Supra vehicles. Is that a common replacement part? Because I imagine you'd need such a part after each race.
Definitely, we have regular customer requests. You don't have it in the picture, but next door in the composite CNC department, we have these parts regularly in production. These are of course parts like rear bumpers and front splitters, which regularly come into contact with competitors, and there's an increased volume of these spare parts.
So approximately how many bumpers are made every year?
That depends on how the customers drive and in what circumstances, the level of rivalry with other drivers while racing. I'd say between 50 and 100.
A significant number considering how many GT4s are out there.
That doesn't take into consideration what goes into the new build, into the new builds. That's just the spare parts volume.
Okay, I understand. Everything from the development to wind tunnel testing, etc., is done in-house then?
That's right, we're one of the few companies that can build a complete car under one roof. Engine mappings happen here in our dynos, in the beginning of course for homologation, the wind tunnel tests, like now for the new Evo kit, where a few aerodynamic elements like the little dive planes you can see on the front apron were developed. That all happens in-house. Whereas we also work with a lot of external suppliers. You always have a choice. Depending on how complex a safety-relevant component is, how high the quantity is, we in supply chain management decide together with technical purchasing, do we produce the component in-house or do we buy it from external suppliers? The big advantage of in-house production is, of course, if you have some kind of race stopper on the line and have to react quickly so that the customers can continue their journey. If, for example, you discover something in NLS1 and need a quick change for NLS2, then you have a huge advantage if you have in-house production, because you can then react relatively quickly. You may also need to produce an external component which actually comes from supplier A or B in-house. When the problem is fixed, then it can be done externally again.
Sounds like it can only be beneficial. Marcel, thank you very much for your time. Thank you for the insights. And we're at the Nürburgring. Well, almost. I'm sitting here in the TGRE simulator, and Kai will explain exactly what's being simulated here. Hello, Kai. Hi. I've never seen a simulator like this one before. What's it all about? This is the core of our product development. I am the group leader of vehicle simulation. That means our group deals with virtual performance evaluation. That is, we build physical vehicle models, program algorithms to make lap time predictions. We drive the development of the vehicles so that we get as much performance out of them as possible. So this simulator isn't one in the classic sense where you train the driver. You simulate the vehicle as much as possible to learn as much as you can about it. Exactly. How close is that to reality? That's a good question. The simulator is a very classic engineering tool. Often people think, okay, this is for driver training, but that's just a residual function. What we're doing here is really developing the vehicle at a very early stage. That's really what we do. How close are we to reality? It depends. But the answer is very close. Our focus isn't on simulating unpredictable events during a race, like if it rains or there's a crash. Those are disturbances, and we are quite happy that we have this extra clean, controllable environment, good weather, clear track. That's really about understanding what we need to make the car faster, and especially the subjective evaluation of the driver. We can calculate quite a lot on the computer, but the bottom line is that the real driver has to drive. Everything we develop and tune must feel good to the real driver, be easy to drive and easy to handle, so that we close the loop, so to speak, to the real driver. And that we can do simulation here, race simulation, lap simulation, to get the data we need. Let's take the GT4 Supra race car. What are the parameters you developed? Chassis settings, chassis setup, aerodynamics? We start with the base vehicle, and the GT4 isn't light years away from the base vehicle. It's about the target sizes. We're trying to figure out where aerodynamic optimization needs to happen within regulations so that it feels good to the driver and results in a good performance. We tell the aero designer what our targets are. We'll say, you need to do such and such with the window. Then they design something, then the vehicle goes into the wind tunnel, and then we get the data back and evaluate it. These were targets. This is the result. Does it fit together? Do we need to refine some more? It's the same with the other parameters, possibly suspension tuning, springs, dampers, but also things like engine mapping, accelerator pedal design, traction control settings, etc. Can you tell me how often you use the simulator? Depends. We currently use the simulator here for all projects, a lot for WEC use with the hypercar, but also for GT4 vehicle development. Partly for road car and development support. On average, I would say 50% utilization. That is, we use it every second day. Super interesting. Thanks for the insights. With pleasure.
Okay, so right behind us there is a 4-post shaker. And what this is about, Nicola will explain us.
So 4 posts because you see you have 1 post per wheel, so each corner. In this way we can simulate the car running. For example, on Nordschleife we decide to put this system and the car will simulate running on the track. On top, we have another other possibility is to have a 7 post. So you have 3 posts more, simulating aero data and cornering, for example, transfer load when you brake, when you accelerate, and all this information are very important for the racing team. Thanks to this facility, when it works, we have some sensor like accelerometer, strain gauge, giving us data to have an information about the system, stiffness of the system, or a part in particular. And then I can know how it affects the damping and how I can choose a set of damper like we did for this Evo car, or the set of anti-roll bar we do.
Means when you have the data, then you go and and do the setup.
Yeah. So this
But-
will, every info we had here will give a kind of base setup
Yeah.
that win us time on track.
Ah, okay, understood. So what is the right process? Because I know that you have a wind tunnel doing aero analysis. I know you also do the visual simulation in your simulator, and you are also simulating here. So where to start and where to end?
If we speak about this specifically, we are just looking at the suspension. So now we
Okay.
are looking on components like damper, like anti-roll bar. You look at the system and the stiffness you can have. You can as
Yeah.
well change the damping with different tires. If you have Pirelli, Michelin, Goodyear,
Yeah.
you can have a result that is different as well.
Okay.
And then through this, you can a bit better understand your system on the chassis.
Very interesting. One last question. If you did your setup, if you did the simulation on the Nordschleife, for example, you did the setup, and now you're doing a reference lap, is there usually a big difference, or how big is the difference?
You always need to have a kind of correlation in between. So this is really a base. And then what helps us is to mainly understand a direction to take. If you have your base, you can go on, for example, stiffer spring
Yeah.
on the car. Did it work or not? Softer spring, did it work or not? And we can in advance, knowing this direction not good, so I will adapt my test plan on the direction that is better, and
Yeah.
I will focus on track on the small best part of
Yeah.
the system.
Sure. And probably it also depends on the driver, the conditions, etc. So a lot of parameters come
This
together.
You need to understand as well. Often I have different driver, and so I know which 3 different driver, for example, I have different kind of input, and he helped me to kind of smooth the data and have an understanding better.
Perfect. Thanks a lot for your time.
No problem. Thank you.
A long and very exciting day is coming to an end. I was able to learn a lot, and I hope you were able to benefit from it too. So I hope to see you next time. Oh, do I get license plates for this car here, I wonder?
Ravenol, the lifeblood of your car.